Hello, this is Team SideScroller, and this is our first sprint progress report. We'll start off with me, Omi Naruzi. Hello, this is Omi Naruzi, and for this sprint, my user stories were as follows. As a player, I want to have a left and right arrow button on the game screen that informs me that I can move left or right so that I can approach or avoid enemies when pressed. And as a player, I want to press the left or right arrow button so that I can approach or avoid enemies. The acceptance criteria is as follows. When the game is open, there should be a left and right arrow buttons showing the player that they can move to the left or right. And when the game is open and the user clicks on the left or right arrow, the user should move to the left or right respectively. And here we are on the main game screen, and we have a left button that shows that you can move left and a right button that shows you can move right. And if I click the left button, I move left, and if I click the right button, I move right.
Hello, this is Micah McKinnon. The user stories I had for Sprint 1 are split between two groups, game screen functionality and movement functionality. Under game screen functionality, the user stories I had are, as a player I want to have 5 hearts of health show on the game screen so that I can survive, and as a player I want to have a score show on the game screen so that I know how awesome I am. For movement functionality, I had the following user stories. As a player, I want to have a cool background so the game appears more realistic. As a player, I want to have the cool background move as I get closer to the right edge of the screen so the game feels more realistic. As a player, I want to have the cool background not move as I get closer to the left edge of the screen so that I'm always traveling towards the end of the level. And lastly, as a player, I want to stay on the screen if I travel left or right so that I always know where I am on the screen. The acceptance criteria for the game screen functionality are 5 hearts of health show up on the top right of the game screen when the game begins, and the score shows up on the left part of the game screen when the game begins. Acceptance criteria for movement functionality are as follows. When the game is open, there is a cool background that appears. The cool background moves with the player so that the game has a realistic feel to it. The cool background does not move when the player reaches the left edge of the screen, and when the game is open and the user travels to the left or right edges of the screen, they do not disappear from the screen. Here we are on the start screen to show once the game loads, certain elements appear. First, as you can see, 5 hearts appear on the top right of the screen, and the score also appears on the left part of the screen. We also have a cool background. And if I go right, the player does not move off the screen, and the background does indeed move with the player. If I go to the left edge of the screen, the player again remains on the screen and the background does not move with the player.
Hello, this is Taro Tachibana, and I'm going to be going over my first sprint, which will cover my user stories and my acceptance criterias. Now, under movement functionality, as a player, I'm going to want to press the A button so that I can perform a jump straight up. And also, as a player, I would want to press the left or right arrow when combined with the A button so I can jump diagonally. And for the acceptance criteria under movement functionality, when the game is open and the user clicks on the A button, the player should jump straight up and fall back to the ground. And when the game is open and the user presses the left or right arrow combined with the A button, the player should jump diagonally and land on the ground level. Now for my demonstration, I'm going to bring in this emulator, and you can see the player jump. Now I'm going to combine it with the left arrow, and you see him jump to the left. Now I'm going to jump and combine that with the right arrow and see him jump to the right. And that should be the end of my demo. Thank you.
Hello, this is Drew Demechko, and these are my Sprint 1 stories. As a player, I want to have an initial screen with a start button so that I know how to start the game. The acceptance criteria, when the user opens the application, there is a start button on the initial screen. Here's the start button. The second story, as a player, I want to press the start button so that I can begin playing the game. The acceptance criteria, when a user clicks on the start button, it opens up an instance of the game. So when I click the start button here, it will open an instance of the new game. Alright. So the third story, as a player, I want to have an initial screen with an exit button so that I can exit the game. And the criteria for that, when the user opens the application, there is an exit button on the initial screen. Here's the exit button. As a player, I want to press the exit button so that I can exit the game. The acceptance criteria, when a user clicks on the exit button, it shuts the application. So when we click the exit button, you can see it shut the application here. Right, my second story is, as a player, I want to have an initial screen with a scores button so that I can compare my scores with other players who played on the same device. Acceptance criteria, when the user opens the application, there is a scores button on the initial screen. Here you can see the scores button. As a player, I want to press the scores button so that I can compare my scores with other players who played on the same device. And the acceptance criteria, when a user clicks on the scores button, it opens a new high scores activity with a clean and organized UI. So when we open the scores activity, this is how it's going to look once we actually have data in here. So right now it's just dummy data. Thanks.